You should have had your police car escort you.
Man, that thing. I have no idea how I don't have a felony because of that car, but that was probably the funnest accidental purchase I've ever made in my entire life.
How'd you accidentally buy the cop car?
So it was for sale on eBay. So let's see. I'm trying. Let's see. My daughter is 28, so she was 14 when I bought it. So at 14 years old, she went with her dad to go buy this brown and tan Indiana sheriff car that I bought off of eBay up in northern Indiana in Miami County. And they were going to drive it in the local demolition derby because it's a 98 Crown Vic, but it had a knock in the motor. And it wouldn't have lasted very long, but it would have been like, race against the cops kind of thing, wreck against the cops or something. And they never used it, and they put it up for sale. And I was a high bidder, so I went up there and bought it and brought it back home and put a brand new Ford 4.6 motor back in it. And I drove it full decaled up as a full code cop car for 2.5 years. So
damn, that's hilarious. Did you dress up ever?
No. And in Indiana, you like police officers can't have goatees. They can't have, you can have like the Magnum PI mustache, but you can't have a goatee. But that is me as the sheriff that I bought it off of, driving it up onto my trailer. And we drove it and drove it and drove it. And then we let the plates go out on it. We didn't renew the registration 1 year. So I drove it into some little bitty hillbilly, the county that is 2 counties over, and got pulled over in it. And, the officer comes up, and of course I'm just standing there, and he goes, where'd you get this thing at? And I said, I bought it on eBay. And I had the auction in the glove box. I had driven this thing for 2 years. I have eaten more free McDonald's on that car than any other car. And, so after 7, you get a free car wash at the big car washes. Like other cops will wave at you, and you're like, hey, but it will.
I love it.
It'll go, down the highway at 150 miles an hour, but it won't go down a 2-lane road at 30 because everybody else is doing 29 miles an hour in front of you.
Yeah,
because they're scared to death. So, but we had it, got pulled over. It got towed in, and they took my little auction with me or with them, and then of course called up to Miami County, Indiana, and said, hey, this guy's driving around an old brown and tan Indiana sheriff car. And they said, when we sold him that car, we undecaled the car. And they called the Ford dealership where they took it, where the motor was knocking. And they said, no, when that car came in here, that car had no decals on it. Mr. Bell re-decaled the car, so he's impersonating a police officer. And I was like, you guys, you're all lying, but there's no way for me to prove it other than my 14-year-old daughter, now 28-year-old daughter, took that picture of that officer driving it up onto the trailer because she had her first digital camera and went out in the country with Dad that day to go buy a car. So she saved my rear end, and my daughter took that picture, and I took it back, and I said, here's your sheriff driving it up onto the car, and I'm in front, and it is fully decaled the day I bought it. So they gave me my car back. I went and renewed the registration, and like the people at the impound lot were like, there's no way he's going to get his car back.
And now you're back on the street serving up Travis brands of justice.
Yes. And we sold that to a cinema vehicle service place, and they blew it up on the movie Death or Grindhouse or Planet Terror. It's one of those Quentin Tarantino's movies. So I had bent the law until it broke, and it was time to let her go. So.
Good for you. That's great. I didn't know you could just buy cop cars and drive around in them.
You kind of can't.
You can.
Well, he did. So
I guess they were supposed to remove the decals. The shocks, the cops lied to save their own bacon and put you in trouble. And the Ford dealership did too. They were like, no. Now that part is extra shitty. Like, I get the cop lying because that's cop shit, but the Ford dealership.
And then they came up and they're like, oh, Mr. Bell, the Miami County Sheriff says he would never sell a car like that. And I'm like, well, I agree with him. He should never have sold a car like this. And they go, and we went one further. We called the Ford dealership, and I go, And then I laid out pictures after pictures after pictures that my daughter took that day. And I go, here's the officer I bought it off of. Matter of fact, here's his name. Here's his bidder ID. And they were going, shit, So I was like, where's my car at? I'll be all right. And the license plate, I had one of those like dare to keep your kids off drugs plate off the back of it. But you in Indiana, of course, owning a license plate company, I love personalized license plates. So it said donut on the back of the plate on it.
So Travis, you mentioned you have a giant course in your backyard on your estate. It's for go-karts and motorcycles that you're in and you're driving them, right?
I get motion sick, so I'm the host of this event. Even though I do race across the country with my Cannonball friends, I still and I do DJ on cruise lines. I am on more. I'm on more Dramamine that's physically allowed. But yes, we built a walking path for like the neighbors and Kyle's dog with neighbors and stuff like that, just to walk around the path. And then we fenced it in and did everything. And then, of course, one of my heavily intoxicated friends was like, dude, you don't have a walking path. You got a go-kart track. And I was like, then so, of course, that turned into the backyard 400. And we had 33 carts in our backyard. When they all have to look like Shriner carts, though. They can't be like a shifter cart with the Hans device and helmets and all that. Well, helmets, and we needed those. But needless to say, we had 33 carts and had a go-kart race in my backyard. And
is it a dirt track?
No, it is a paved 1/3 mile go-kart track with 12 turns in my backyard.
That rules.
Does it cost a fourth?
That's so fun.
I had my driveway paved, and it was a financial event.
The financial event of the decade.
That is it. There is some of the paved path that goes back behind them, probably about 1/3 of a mile. That is the turns 7 and 8 that go between the trees, and we weaves in and out. And that's what everybody had to look like. You could not show up. You had to have a body on the cart, and it was a 6.5 horse. And it was the craziest. I was very sure we were going to put somebody's leg all backwards.
What's the top speed you get up to in these little cars on your?
Unfortunately, it's about 41 miles an hour.
Whoa!
That's pretty quick in those.
No, that's deadly in those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then of course, if you get shoved off the track, you're going to end up in a tree. And so that the person. Yeah, that's my brother-in-law going ass over tea kettle right there in turn 11. And
he's wearing his gear.
He ended
he's
up
wearing a helmet and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Does he have gloves on?
Yeah, we kind of that's him again. He was notoriously on 2 wheels all day, but we made sure everybody wore gloves and long sleeve shirts until my brother-in-law showed up, and then he just went out there and laid the wood. And we had a mariachi band for the opening ceremonies. We had everything, a grand marshal. If you won the backyard 400, you won a 1989 Chevy Cavalier Z24 convertible. So I have never seen more people competitive over a Cavalier.
That's awesome.
Your brother-in-law's got an Alpine Star t-shirt on. That's got to have some level of protection.
Yeah. Well, and then like I said, you got the Corvette and
clothing,
whatever. That's Chris Michaels up there in that's on VinWiki, and he's on the Hot Wheels Challenge. He's driving the little Dodge Mini Ram up there. So yeah,
it's hilarious.
It was pretty ridiculous. And there's a comedian called Alex Morrison, and he is like notorious for like 305 Come Alive or some crazy. He can do it substantially better than I can. But we invited him up here, and he was our grand marshal, so it was ridiculous. But you can see there's a fence all the way around the property, and there is a go-kart track in my backyard.
That looks like an expensive fence.
Yeah, it's I have great neighbors except one, so he got the fence.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
He doesn't like the go-kart course.
That's an expensive fence.
Yeah, he is difficult, and I've lived on the street basically my whole life. He's lived here for 3 years, and I should never know my city inspector, but I know him real good because of my my neighbor on the other side of the fence.
Quick question, Travis.
Nice.
Is it possible that you are difficult?
Yes.
Like my neighbors, he complains about the go-kart races I hold in my backyard.
He's always like, I'm 85. I have dementia. It scares me.
But it's once a year. I mean, they're not out there racing right now. It's one day a year. And so, if he can't live with that, that's not a problem. There's a fence. So enjoy the fence.
That's actually really cool. Now, my first concern is like, what if one of these fellas cracks his skull open on my little course out here in my backyard, and then I have to sell my fence to pay him off?
Or with a backhoe or whatever.
Yeah. Unless there's some sort of
do we sign waivers before we hop
Yes.
in the cars?
Oh yeah, but that waiver is about as good as the paper it's on. It's
Are you in Georgia?
Yes. No, we're in Indiana, Indianapolis. We are about 4 miles from the track, maybe 6 miles from the track. So,
oh wow! So if you get bored of your track, you just go to that.
Well, I own one of the I own a Winston Cup car from the very first Brickyard 400. So I have problems. And the last time I went to Indy to drive it around the track with Ed Boley and then a bunch of our YouTube friends. We got rained out. We actually had a pass to drive it on the track, got rained out. So I drove it home. And so out there on the interwebs, there's me driving. That's it. That's my number 99, Danny Sullivan's car from the very first Brickyard 400. He also won the 1985 Indy 500. Then the city of Indianapolis put him in it. That's it. And
Zach, you are doing an amazing job. Thank you.
Yes,
bro.
I drove it down 465 and all the way home because I was shitty. So we had a pass to get on the track, but
that's pretty awesome.
We got canceled. So if you kind of Google out there the Chevy Lumina NASCAR on 465, I drove it 16 miles home. So,
and is that frowned upon?
Oh yeah, it's
loud.
It's and it wants to go left a lot. So
it's fucking loud.
Yeah.
I didn't consider how loud it would be.
Yeah,
I didn't consider that. Does it just pull left all the time?
Pulls left hard all the time. It is set up to go left. So we left out of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, drove down. It was myself and Ed Boley and Jared Pink from Questionable Garage, and Jared was driving my Ute. Ed was driving one of his crazy exotic cars, and they just followed me up onto the highway, and I just went home. So